Emails from the European Medicines Agency don't always leap from my screen at me, but a recent one really did that. The AMA was announcing the suspension of dozens of product licenses, including ones from Sanofi, Sandoz and many other leading firms. It was because of flawed trials by an Indian subcontractor called GVK Biosciences. Now, this is an interesting pointer to an often neglected area of the industry's evolution, as I'll explain before I return to the practical implications. It's a platitude that the life sciences sector, faced with a changing market, needs to improve its capabilities in many areas. This incontestable statement always gets slightly bored and odds when I make it to senior industry executives. But when I go on to ask the industry leaders about what capability development they will focus upon, their answer is surprisingly narrow. It's almost always focused on innovation, usually in products, and with some peripheral talk about supporting capabilities such as market access or added value services. This is understandable and to some extent a culturally programmed response from an industry with a long heritage of technological innovation. But I suspect this focus is too narrow for many companies. Allow me to expand on that idea. As I've written and talked about elsewhere, the life sciences industry landscape is fragmenting into a number of subhabitats, each of which will require a business model or a set of them that is both different from the present models and different from its future peers in other subhabitats. Some of these habitats will require superb innovative capabilities, but not all. There will be large global segments where clinical requirements are simple and the customer is the consumer. These segments will have some similarities with today's OTC market, but will concern many more primary care disease areas such as COPD, asthma, hyperlipidemia, hypertension and other chronic conditions. As we can see in many emerging markets today, the physician may have a role to play in these segments, but payment will be out of pocket. There will be a large choice of generics and the patient consumer will make that choice. But on what grounds will the future patient consumer choose? Yes, prescribers may influence and price will play a role, but for many, if not most patients, trust will become vitally important. In many other markets, trusting a brand to be consistently safe and of good quality is the major reason that many consumer brands survive in a world of cheap and imitators and own labels. It's hard to believe that when the issue is health rather than, say, the taste of a soft drink, that patient consumers won't also use the brand as a shortcut to assessing how trustworthy a product is. There will always, of course, be the price is everything segment, but consumer markets tell us that trusted brands with a reasonable price premium will usually win the biggest share of the segment's profit pool. Added to this, the fears about counterfeits and adulteration, and we should expect brand trust by the consumer, not by the prescriber, to be the major source of competitive advantage in many parts of the life sciences market. Now, how good is our industry at creating and maintaining consumer brand trust? There is research on this, and it puts leading pharma brands alongside tobacco companies. Well, that should tell us something, as should the generally low unprompted awareness of the corporate brand among most patients. Quite simply, we're not in the same league as, for example, a BMW or an Apple or even a Heinz or a Kellogg's when it comes to creating brand trust. There's a good evolutionary reason for this, of course. We're not good at consumer brand trust because we've not needed to be. Our industry, generally speaking, is evolved for a world where prescribers made the decision and the patient did as he or she was told. The very word prescription means to instruct or to set out a law. But in a global market where governments pay for less and prescribers have less influence, it seems likely that patient consumers will be more important and that they will rely heavily on brand trust. To use an English idiom, the goalposts are moving. So what does this mean in practice? Is it just another academic prescription to add another thing to the C-suite worry list? Well, not necessarily. To begin with, being a brand trust leader is only especially important in consumer-led market habitats. In other parts of the market, it remains an important but not critical issue. But if the patient consumer is important to your strategy, then trust leadership may be even more important than product leadership. And that doesn't mean just spending money on brand campaigns. It means managing the supply chain to ensure that what you sell is as good as your brand says it is. And that's what the EMA email reminds us all of.